Hey, what's up, fam? This is Pastor Aaron, and once again, I'm coming with a pastoral encouragement. I've really enjoyed kind of communicating with you in this way. Plus, you all are so dear to my heart, and it brings this time to be able to remember you and all that God is doing in us. And hopefully you hear in my voice, see in my face how much I really do love you. There's a couple things I want to remind you of, and hopefully this will encourage you as it has encouraged me. But I have been spending time in God's Word regularly. There's words that keep coming up. There's particularly two words that have been coming up in my times with Him. And it's two words of remembrance and repeat. Remember, repeat. There's so many ways in which God calls His people throughout the whole narrative to remember this. And the way He calls them to remember it is by them spending time repeating it yearly or maybe weekly or even daily. Now, if we're honest, those two words are not fun words for us. We don't enjoy repetitive things or even enjoy remembering things that we think like we know. Well, we've heard this before. We already know it. But what I want to encourage you in is for you to see that it's the things that you've remembered and repeated that actually become deep passion and affection for us. It's almost like our cravings aren't enough if we don't remember and repeat. Our cravings aren't enough to keep us. We like more the word romance. We love the idea that we just fall in love and it just keeps growing. But anybody who's been in covenant knows, yes, there is a romance in covenant. There's a real romance that happens, but it must be planted in a firm foundation of devotion, commitment, or remembering why you fell in love over and over again and repeating and continuing to repeat and showing your dear commitment. No matter what seasons come, you're continually committing. Now, I want us to be encouraged in seasons like this, that if you do not have a strong soil or foundation, if you will, of remembering and repeating, your romance will fade or die. I think romance can grow and flourish, and it should. Nobody wants no romance. But if it is not planted in the soil of devotion, friends, then what will end up happening is we'll see that romance begin to fade, and we'll start falling in love, if you will, with other things, especially in seasons like this, hard seasons where it's hard for us to feel like God is present or God is near. And so what we end up doing is forgetting and forsaking, not remembering and repeating. I'm going to give you a couple of scriptures on this. One came to mind actually in Exodus chapter 13. This text came to life to me, and it says this: remember your deliverance, even in the land flowing with milk and honey. That's Exodus 13. Remember your deliverance, even in the land flowing with milk and honey. What he was telling them is actually in seasons like this, where things seem to be falling apart, it's actually greater opportunity for you to remember how God has worked. It's actually easier for us to recall the way God has worked in seasons like this, what all of us are facing together. Man, God has been faithful, and we're wanting Him to come and be present again. But when you get into the land flowing of milk and honey, actually, it's easier for you to start leaning into your own strength and forgetting that you've been delivered, that you didn't do this on your own. Actually, the times of prosperity, it's harder to remember the deliverance. So if you didn't have a pattern of remembering and repeating already built in of who God is, what ends up happening in seasons like this is we can forget, or we can lean into forsaking him and going, man, he's not there. But for us who have remembered and repeating, our romance is being stirred because we're trying to recall all that God has done for us in the past, because right now we're having a hard time seeing it with our eyes because there's so many things swirling around us. Another thing that came to mind was Psalms. I'm pulling my Bible out here, but Psalms 136. Actually, they repeated over and over again a simple line. They repeated, his steadfast love endures forever. It could get monotonous if you just saw how many times. They kept saying it some over 25 times. And it just says, oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His steadfast love endures forever. Give thanks to God of gods. His steadfast love endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord of Lords, because his steadfast love endures forever. To him who alone does great wonders, his steadfast love endures forever. I've only read 4 verses, and some of you may be getting tired, like you've said that already. But they just kept repeating it and repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. And here's why I think this is important, because you need to pound these things into the hardness of our dry hearts. His steadfast love endures forever. Over and over and over and over and over again, we need to hear that. In seasons of battle, his steadfast love endures forever. Since creation, his steadfast love endures forever. We need to hear that over and over again because it's true, and because in times like this, we've got to repeat it to ourselves so that we can remember, and our affections or our romance can be stirred. Brothers and sisters, develop the discipline of repetition and remembering, and watch as the romance grows in dry seasons like this. His steadfast love endures forever. I love you, family.